Welcome back to Any Recapped. Today we will recap ranking of kings. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Let's start. Little Prince Boji finds solace in his mother's embrace after being picked on. While comforting her prince, Sheena makes Boji promise her that one day he'll become the strongest king anyone has seen before. After escaping his palace, Boji unintentionally catches Cage dragging a huge bag. As soon as Cage realizes he has been seen, he rushes after Boji to confront him. When he's met with silence, Cage grows tired and pulls out a knife and demands money from Boji. As Boji tries to communicate, Cage quickly realizes that the boy is deaf and speech impaired. Despite Boji's disability, the two successfully establish contact as Cage somehow understands Boji, who in return possesses the ability to read lips. Cage orders Boji to strip and hand him the extravagant clothes. The street is filled with laughter as the firstborn Prince Boji confidently parades the town in nothing but his tidy-whities. The next day, Cage patiently waits for his victim. When Boji happily greets him, Cage questions him on his uplifted attitude. Cage learns that Boji is just happy to have someone who understands him, so he makes an attempt to mock him. As Boji is too simple-minded to understand the insult, he agrees with Cage, which further irritates him. Boji then tells Cage to meet him at the same spot as he'll bring more clothes for him. The next day, after repeating the same ritual of handing his clothes to Cage, Boji reveals that he's a prince and points towards his home, the castle. When Boji tells Cage that one day he'll become a great king, he's met with laughter. Cage calls him an idiot and points at his disability. With determination in his eyes, Boji tells Cage that he'll still become a great king despite all odds. Boji's iron will sparks interest and curiosity in Cage. After he decides to follow Boji home, Cage finds gossipers and kids ridiculing Boji. When an embarrassed Boji runs home, he stumbles upon the second queen, Hilling, Justice Minister Sandio, Swordsmaster Domas, King's Spear Apias, and the Shield of the Queen, Dorshi. Hilling scolds Boji for roaming around naked, but Sandio suggests that the prince might have been mugged. As Domas works as the translator, Boji quickly tells Hilling that he lost his clothes while playing. This information infuriates Hilling, which makes her berate Boji. She compares her son Data with Boji and tells Boji that he's unfit to become a king. After the queen walks away with the men, Cage wonders to himself that the king must be stupid to marry a wretched woman like Hilling. After following Boji to his room, Cage finds Boji silently crying. After Boji exits the room to meet his father, the King Bossy. Cage realizes that all this time, Boji had been putting up a strong front. As he's trying to find Boji, a sword is suddenly lodged in his path. Bebin, the snake handler, addresses Cage by calling out his roots to the Shadow Clan. Meanwhile, Boji greets his father. Several years ago, when the villagers were attacked by a monstrous horde, there was a tall giant who saved the people from their ill fate. The giant would later be known as the King Bos, who established the kingdom of Bossy. As Bos asks his son about him roaming around without clothes, he begins to cough blood. After calling Boji near him, he affectionately pets his hand and tells him that he adores him as he's son of the late queen. However, his heart aches for his country since Boji is puny and frail. He then addresses Domas and asks him to prepare an arduous training session for Boji. On the other hand, Bebin launches attacks on Cage as he hails from the Shadow Clan, which got wiped out for the attempt to assassinate the king. When Cage manages to outrun Bebin, he employs his snakes to sniff him out. As Domas grows angry at Boji, he takes his frustration out on the training equipment. Data comes trotting and challenges Boji for a match. Doma pipes up to the prince that Boji isn't ready, which results in Data challenging Doma instead. Believing that Data is overconfident, he takes him on. As they battle, Doma is greatly impressed by Data and realizes that he's the spitting image of Bossy. When Doma overpowers him, Boji notices that his master is impressed by Data, which makes him challenge Data for a match. As the residents and castle gossipers gather for the match, Boji stuns the audience as he dodges Data's strong attacks and manages to hit him. After an attempt on King Bo's life, Jesslyn, a shrewd man, commanded the Light Clan to launch a campaign of genocide, targeting the Shadow Clan that played a hand in the plot. A young Cage tries to escape from the bloodthirsty soldiers with his mother. However, when Jesslyn and his men catch up to them, Cage's mother tells Cage to find sanctuary in the forest while she takes on the army. After sending her son to safety, Cage's mother faces Jesslyn. While fighting the army single-handedly, Jesslyn tries to break her spirit by telling her that her son has been caught by the army, when in reality, Cage is rescued by a young Countess Poise. As Jesslyn walks past a concealed Cage bearing the lifeless body of his mother, Cage starts to cry loudly. To protect him, Poise mimics his cries. Once the coast is clear, Poise and her servant send Cage to the neighboring kingdom to find shelter. However, this was just the beginning of a life filled with pain for young Cage. The first few days of his life without his mother are filled with sorrow coupled with ravenous hunger. After getting beaten to pulp for stealing food, Cage catches the eye of a mean, burly man who offers him scraps for his intense labor. Soon, the man realizes that Cage can do a lot more. As he sends Cage to do his evil biddings like plundering homes for coins, Cage starts to feel valued around his owner. One day, Cage dreams of a conversation he had with his mother. As his mother tells him about life as an assassin, she tries to console Cage by telling him that they offer their services to those in need. Things take an ugly turn for Cage when he wakes up to a troop of soldiers. Luckily, the night becomes his ally as he escapes in the darkness. The next day, when he goes back to his master, he's shooed away by him. When night comes, Cage follows the man to a pub where he gets into a brawl and ends up getting himself killed. Cage rushes to his master's side and cries while remembering the good times. As life finally gets to him, Cage devotes his time in stealing from others until he met Boji. While looking back at his past, he wonders why he followed Boji as he watches him spar with his skilled brother. Boji takes on Data, but Domus intervenes and signs something to him which results in a sudden change in Boji. As he lets his brother overpower and beat him, Cage grows apprehensive. When Data becomes more aggressive with his attacks, Appius throws a spear to intervene. As the match comes to end, Data asks Bebin about Domus's intervention. Bebin tells him that Domus told Boji that his actions aren't worthy of a king's swordsmanship. He scoffs at the news and retires to his room where he speaks to a mysterious figure in the mirror. Meanwhile, Domus feels sorry for his sleeping Boji as he was born under a star which prevents him from becoming stronger. Once Domus leaves, Boji tries to pick a sword but fails miserably. As he begins to cry, Cage comes out and tries to console him. He tells Boji that he wants to be by his side. As an injured Boji struggles to get up, Cage tells him to take it easy and bids him goodbye for the night. When he hides underneath Boji's bed, he sees a woman approaching Boji. The mysterious woman edges closer to Boji. A green light illuminates the room as the woman magically heals Boji's injuries. When Cage exits Boji's room, he's caught by Bebin and his snakes. Morning comes bearing terrible news for the kingdom as King Bos has passed away. Sandio announces the king's decree that states the new king will be Boji. Suddenly, a cloud of smoke breaks out from the late king's mouth. The cloud then takes the form of a huge red demon. As the group retracts in horror, the demon points at Boji and disappears in thin air. Later, Data faces the magic mirror in his room and angrily tells the mirror that Boji was chosen as the king. However, the mirror assures him that he'll be the next king. As the entire court is gathered to hear about the announcement for the new king, Sori notifies the public that the new king will be Prince Data. The official declaration catches Boji off guard. It's later revealed that Hilling secretly held a meeting with Bosi's most loyal men. After voting among the men, it was decided that Data would take the throne. Meanwhile, Cage is locked up by Bebin. After freeing himself from the shackle, Cage tries to escape. However, Bebin catches him and asks him again about his evil plan. Cage insists that he's just trying to help Boji. On the other hand, Boji tearfully runs away. Bebin finds him and inquires about Cage. When Boji affirms that Cage is a friend, Bebin informs him that Cage is left on a journey and will never see him again. When he recalls his previous conversation with Cage, he realizes that something doesn't add up. On the castle roof, Data calls for Bebin and orders him to murder Appius and Sandio as they voted for Boji to become the king. Bebin thinks to himself that this couldn't be Data's idea. Meanwhile, Boji runs to the prison to locate Cage. He ends up in Mitsumata's lair. Boji draws a picture of Bebin and demands an answer from the talking snake. When Mitsumata confirms that Bebin has captured Cage, Boji asks for Cage's whereabouts. Mitsumata politely refuses to help Boji as he can't betray his master. When Boji begins to weep, Mitsumata assures him that Cage is safe and has struck a deal with Bebin. He also adds that there are many who cherish him. Upon the new king's order, Bebin makes an attempt on Spear's life. However, Spear quickly overpowers Bebin and leaves after vowing to himself that he'll make Boji the king. Meanwhile, Boji seeks permission from Hilling to go on a journey. When he's denied, he tries to escape from the tower wall but is quickly discovered by Hilling. However, when he falls from the tower, Hilling rushes to his aid and heals him magically. When the magic wears her out, she's taken to her room where she begins to recount her first encounter with Boji. Realizing that she has been hard on Boji, she grants him permission to take off on the journey, but tells him that Domas and a soldier called Hokuro will accompany him. Domas was filled with triumph when King Boss appointed him as Boji's teacher. Determined to teach him all that he knows about swordsmanship, Domas devoted his time learning sign language in order to communicate better with his disciple. Queen Hilling is informed about the arrival of the judge from the Committee of Rankings of Kings. Meanwhile, the mirror urges Data to dispose of Boji as it's the king's responsibility to circumvent future problems. The mirror also suggests Data to extract strength from King Bos's body as Bos contained great power. However, Data tells the mirror that he wants to rule with his own potential. The judge of the committee greets Appius. As he recalls the past, he comments how King Bos would have been ranked number 1 if the ranking system only cratered to strength alone. Appius then inquires about the ranking system and how the king in the first place gets to take an item of his choosing from the divine treasure vault. The judge confirms the news. Appius continues that all the kings hailed as number 1 have gone for the same item that causes them to lose their minds where they go missing. When he asks the judge about the item, he slyly says that he can't reveal that information. On the other hand, Boji has the time of his life as he takes to the road with Hokuro and Domas. When they reach a neighboring town, Domas instructs Hokuro to look after Boji while he restocks the supplies. But Boji quickly takes off, leaving Hokuro behind. After Boji views a puppet show, Hokuro finds Boji sleeping next to a fountain. However, Hokuro quickly wakes him up after noticing his missing bag. When the two tell Domas the unfortunate news, he thunders upon them. After lecturing Boji, Domas regains himself and takes the two for dinner. Meanwhile, the judge places Data on the Mangtia spot. As the trio has dinner, Domas asks Hokuro if he's ready to follow any order given to him. When Hokuro asks him what sort of order, Domas repeats his question. Hokuro replies to him that he doesn't know. Domas states that he doesn't have enough resolve. He further says that their superiors bear a lot of responsibility and people like him and Hokuro aren't in any place to question their orders. When morning comes, Domas informs the two that their journey will become dangerous from here on out. Boji finds himself overjoyed as he locates his missing backpack. As the trio advance ahead, Boji falls in a trap. When he ventures deeper into the hole, Boji comes across a deranged man. Boji quickly explains his situation and the man takes him in. As the two sit to devour a boar, the man asks Boji to perform a rite with him which honors the sacrifices of the animals. The man turns to Boji and darkly asks him if he'll become his next sacrifice. When Boji flees from the man, he regroups with Domas and Hokuro. As their journey resumes, they reach a place called the Gates of Hell. After Domas sends Hokuro to find a place to rest, Domas takes Boji back to the Gates of Hell. As Domas urges Boji to take a closer look, he pushes Boji into the hole. Boji finds himself on the steep as the lifeless pit comes alive with the flames from hell. As he recalls previous events, Boji realizes that it was his backpack that miraculously saved him from the Inferno's waiting arms. When he goes to pick his bag, Cage crawls out from the bag and greets Boji. Tears start to pool around his eyes as Boji recalls Cage's words of him being there for him. As Boji begins to weep, Cage starts tearing up with him. Cage then discloses to Boji that he had been protecting him from harm's way throughout this whole time as he was ordered by Bibin to escort Boji to safety since he knew someone was after his life. Cage tells Boji that their next destination is the underworld as they'll meet someone that has the potential to make Boji powerful. Domas is summoned by King Data. When Data asks why he voted for him to become the king, Domas tells him that he believed the burden of the crown would weigh heavy on Boji. Data cuts him off with a menacing cackle and then directs a flower pot at Domas. He angrily calls Domas a coward for his betrayal. Domas bows down in shame. When he asks Data what he can do to prove himself worthy, Data cryptically tells him to assassinate Boji. Reflecting back at his actions, Domas is filled with pain and guilt. As Boji and Cage continue their descent, Cage gives him a crown made of cloth. However, the crown gets swept up and lands on a skull. Suddenly, Boji's nose starts to tickle. Soon, they're surrounded by poisonous smoke. Meanwhile, Data questions the mirror about her true identity. The mirror tells him that she's a sworn ally of his father. Once Data comes across a giant door, he's greeted by two loyal servants of Bossy. The mirror informs Data that the servants will assist him in gaining power. As the gate opens up to a frozen menagerie, Data finds himself appalled as the servants churn out the frozen body of his father. The purity of his late father is then stored in a container as the mirror tells Data that his beginning starts from here. On the other hand, an unconscious Boji and Cage are picked up by guards. The mirror informs Data that his father's marrow is mixed with a potion and the heat from light will change the contents of the potion. The heated potion then leads to the birth of a phoenix, which is then decapitated by the servants. While they extract blood from the head, they burn the rest of the body to create a jewel which is mixed with the elixir. The mirror urges Data to drink the elixir. However, once he refuses, the mirror reminds him of his low ranking. As Data remains adamant and challenges the servants to drink it, the mirror tells him that the elixir only works on the carrier of the Bos bloodline. The mirror once again tempts Data with power, however he's reminded of Bibin's words of wisdom. When he firmly refuses to drink, the mirror orders the servants to attack Data. After overpowering the servants, Data declares that he'll top the ranking with his own potential and spills the elixir on the ground. As the guards bring Boji and Cage to a castle, the king labels the two as cursed since they weren't killed by the gas. On the other hand, Domas and Hokuro battle with each other after Hokuro learns about Boji's death. The king addresses Boji and asks him if he's the son of Bosse. Without giving Boji the chance to answer, the king mockingly states that he heard that after Bose passed away, the younger son took the throne as the older son was incompetent. He then questions Boji's purpose to enter the underworld. When Cage replies in place of Boji, the king stops him and tells him that he addressed Boji. Cage insists that he'll do the talking as Boji can't hear nor speak. After laughing at the news, the king asks Cage to continue. Cage tells him that they've heard about a man in the underworld that has the potential to turn an ordinary man to a king. However, when he fails to recall the man's name, the king reveals that the person they're searching for is none other than him. King Desha ranks as second in the rankings of the kings. After learning this information, Cage pleads Desha to take Boji under his wings. Desha tells him that first he'll assess Boji's capabilities. He then orders one of his soldiers to spar with Boji. Just as the match is about to commence, Desha casually mentions that the soldier happens to be the captain of the Order of the Underworld, an army which is acknowledged for its power to decimate countries, and no monster has ever managed to escape from the clutches of the army. Desha adds that the order is renowned all across the world. As always, Boji fails to make a dent on the mighty soldier. Desha quickly stops the match and labels Boji's attempts as absurd. Cage rushes to his defense and says that Boji is really good at dodging attacks. Desha reluctantly gives Boji a second chance. Before attacking, the captain says to Boji that he expected better from the son of Bosse, and making him a strong man would be an impossible wish. As he launches a series of attacks, the captain finds himself stunned by Boji's ability to dodge all the attacks. However, this doesn't faze Desha as he refuses to take Boji in. When Cage hands him a letter of recommendation, Desha angrily tears the paper and orders his soldiers to throw the two out. Just as Boji and Cage are about to leave, the captain hands them the torn letter and reveals they mistook Desha for his brother Despa. He adds that Prince Despa possesses great wisdom which will aid Boji. After bidding the captain goodbye, the two leave to find Despa. On the other hand, Data finds himself bamboozled by Appias. Before Appias can finish off Data, the mirror orders him to stop. Appias immediately recognizes the voice as Lady Miranjo. He then recalls his first encounter with a cloaked woman. As Miranjo ushers a scared Appias closer to her, she whispers that she'll change him. Appias bows in front of the mirror as Miranjo beckons him to come closer. Data picks up the weapon to attack Appias. However, as he's about to land a fatal blow, Miranjo stops him. As Data lowers his guard, Appias hits him hard in the stomach, causing him to faint. While Boji and Cage greet Despa, Miranjo manages to feed an unconscious Data the elixir. She says that he was right to be anxious as the elixir isn't what she claimed it to be. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and leave a like for more similar content. See you in the next video. Bye.